So I posted the wrong starting screen. It started with ending. So hello everyone, sorry for the delay. I had some things to take care of, so I couldn't be any earlier. But today we will continue with everything that is related to architecture and whatnot. So on the last stream I have done this guy. So this was... I don't remember the name actually. Monaster Norvang bodajże, or something like this. Let me search for it. Yeah, Noravang Monastery. So a really cool place. Here is how it looks like in the real life. So basically this is a photo I just found on the internet. And today I guess I will try to explain you some things about the construction geometry and everything and whatnot. So I think I will start with these three guys. Actually, I found this really cool looking building. Also, I found plans for it. It was Hagby Kirka, I guess, named like a Hagby Kirka. So let me just search for it. Hagby Kirka. Something along these lines. Later I will search for the proper name and just post it, but I guess it's Hagby Kirka. So Hagby Kirka. We will see. Yeah, it's Hagby Kirka. So if anyone is wondering about this building, because as I said, it looks pretty cool. This is Hagby Kirka. And what is really cool about it, it has like this intersection of like a square building connecting to like a cylindrical type of a thing. So as you can see in here, these are like the cylinders together, and here are the like the smaller buildings. So it's a really neat type of a thing. So I guess we will start with this one, since this is like the simplest building in here, and it's also kind of similar to the last thing that we have done previously. So in here I would like to show you some things on how you can, for example, construct the windows, how you can construct the entrance and everything. And basically it will be like a small tutorial on smaller parts of a building combined together. So later you will be able to combine the same like things to something, yeah, to basically to something. So basically, if you are drawing any type of an architecture, it's a really good idea to always think about every surface as a simple plane. So if you think about anything as a plane, then it will give you way easier time to understand what exactly is going on, because you can plan everything that you are going to draw like in basically a 2D format. You don't really have to think about geometry that much, and you can get familiar with proportions and everything in a little bit better manner. And if you will get like familiar with proportions and everything, then it will be way easier for you to determine how tall something should be, how short something should be. Basically, you don't need to worry about perspective at all at this stage, because you just don't have to do it. So in my case, I see the whole thing is a little bit too short from the bottom. I could like just move this guy in here, but I prefer to like add something to the bottom. Then I see more or less this like black lines are in here, and I'm also drawing in the symmetry to make it basically easier for me. And as you can see, these are these guys in here. And what is really cool about the symmetry, it really allows you to like quickly draw symmetrical. This is kind of obvious, but it allows you to create like a diagonals in a really clear and understandable manner. So it's always a good idea, if you are going to draw anything, to, well, to just have something like this to happen. Because if you are going to draw traditionally, and I really recommend to any of you to just try drawing traditionally, all this architectural type of a thing is, then most likely you will have no tool to draw in a symmetry. So you'll have to like find a way how to draw in a symmetry actually. So in here I see these guys have like this entrance in here, and the top part actually is half of a circle. So what I can do in here is I can just draw half of a square I have like a really good idea on how basically to draw a flat circle into a square. And now it's kind of not easy. Whoa. And now I have like this arc that I wanted to have in those squares. So I can kind of like rework it later, but it does not really matter. But what I do now, I can also rework some of the like heights and everything. So it will change the diagonals, because as you can see they don't match anymore, but it does not change like the middle point. Like the middle point in here will be a bit lower, but it still will be like in the same distance from left to right. It basically will constantly be in the center. So by lowering the top part, basically I only move everything a little bit more down. But as I said, it does not really matter if we are just searching for proportions and everything. And what is really cool about doing something like this way, it allows you to kind of get a little bit better understanding on what you are going to draw. So for example, if you are going to draw some sort of a building, it's always a good idea, in my opinion, to simply study it a bit more, to just get familiar with it, so you can understand what is happening in here, how the rooftop, for example, looks like, what is the angle of the rooftop, and all these like small details. And just by looking at stuff in 2D, you can find like a lot of cool informations, like for example, that this window is slightly lower than the top part of this like pillars on the sides. So if I'm going to draw like a window in here, I know it will not be as high as it is in here. So it gives me a little bit better idea on what to draw here. And also for the entrance, you can see you have some like things happening in here. They go a little bit more in depth. I don't know how much there are like transfers and everything happening in here. I don't think it really matters at that point. But if you can try to count something like this, it might be like important a bit later. And also in here, instead of like a straight line, I have this like really subtle arc. So this is basically the first thing that you can do to basically practice drawing architecture. And then you can like try to proceed to draw the entire building, like from the front view, side view, and everything and whatnot, to basically get a better understanding on what is actually going on in here. Because what I would like to do now is to pretty much draw the same surface, but to draw it in the perspective. So I can show you, for example, how to draw a window or how to draw this entrance, and yeah, that's pretty much all. So as with the first example that we have done in here for the architecture, we will actually start with some sort of a plane. And with this plane, I wanted to draw it a little bit more in 3-point perspective. So the vertical lines are not really vertical. As you can see, they are slightly like tilted to the sides. Like this is the vertical line in here, and this is the vertical line in here. So I can kind of adjust it by just rotating it. The second thing, well, the second thing basically is that this line will be at some sort of an angle, and the angle on the top part will be a little bit like more gentle. It will be a little bit more delicate because it's closer to the horizon line. So the idea is, if you have like a horizon line, then this line will be a little bit more like angled, and this one will be a little bit less angled, I guess, if this is the right expression for it, but this is the general idea for what I'm going to do. And now in here, I can do exactly the same thing. I will like divide the whole surface into a half, and I try to match the same line. So basically this line, and this line, if extended, they will meet in the exactly same point. So basically this is how the 3-point perspective works. And now what I can do, I can, for example, divide like the parts into halves. So basically the more of like the supporting lines I do have of these guidelines, the easier it will be for me to actually draw something. So in here, I should see how it looks like. It's a good idea to just rotate the surface, so you will be able to see if this line looks like it's angled properly. I think it looks kind of okay, so I will leave it like this. And now, if I would like to, for example, add a rooftop to it, I will simply extend this line a little bit more to the top. If you have problems with drawing like a straight line, just use Shift for it. And then I can draw like a rooftop. So I simply select like a point in here. More or less, it does not have to be really perfect. Like, again, the more you will draw, the better you will get at like guessing these proportions and everything. And always, if this thing, in your opinion, is a little bit like is a little bit too thin, you can always kind of like just extend it by transforming the object. So it is okay as long as you only have like 2D objects in here. So at the moment, this is only like a surface. Nothing is really like protruding out from this geometry. And now I can like select all the lines for everything that will be like protruding from it. So these guys will go like here. And what I am basically now doing is I'm trying to prepare the flat surface for the extrusions. So I can like later add like volume to it because I will know what I am working with. And the problem in digital is you always can get a little bit too precise. So I prefer to draw these things, as I said previously, on paper, because in there the margin of error is simply a bit bigger. And I prefer to have like a small margin of error. And in here, as you can see, adding the thickness to it is basically like creating a line that follows the perspective. And what is cool with old buildings, you don't need to be like extremely precise with it. Nothing will really happen if something is a little bit like uneven, because we kind of expect the old buildings to be uneven. So all the small, let's say, mistakes will kind of be justified. So in here it goes like this. And also at this stage, it will be a smart idea to actually add the second vanishing point. So I will see how this whole like geometry will extrude in depth, because this is also a thing that I would like to do. And actually we will mark it. So the basic idea, if you are drawing like just eyeballing everything, is exactly the same. This surface go like this, and we'll choose this edge. This things will go like this, and basically this line in here that I'm trying to draw right now should go in the angles in between. So the same story, we have like a horizon line, we have this point, and this point, and let's say this line is this line. All the lines need to go to the exactly same vanishing point. So this is the only thing you should really keep in mind. And usually with this type of things, I suggest to keep it on a separate layers, because it's a bit easier for you to like manage them. And what is really cool in Photoshop, you can just select a line if you think it's incorrect, and you can just slightly modify it, or you can even duplicate it to see if the angles are not repeating. Because if there is something that you do not really want to have in your drawing, is repeating like angles of the lines that should be in perspective. So I can always also like duplicate the lines and just move them, or prepare like a whole grid. Like the easiest way to actually approach it will be to just, for example, prepare like one line, create some sort of a grid out of these lines, and then I will try to like transform it. So I will match the top part, I will match this part, and basically all the lines that I drew in here will like take care of all the perspective that is happening in here. So as you can see, this line in here is tilted in a little bit weird way. So now with this like really simple verification, I can see it should go a little bit more like this. So it will follow all the lines in the perspective. And same for this guy. It's not like a huge mistake, but later it will be noticeable. So it's always good to like double check on what you are doing. And now I know that everything that I have in here is pretty much fine. So let me continue with this building. So maybe actually we will like close the entire geometry for this whole thing, for this whole building. So we will have like the solid block, and again I just need to like follow the geometry. The problem with this method is I really kind of guessed what type of like second vanishing point is in this case. So if later I will draw an ellipse, I will kind of need to match an ellipse to this perspective to get this exact result. I don't think this is the best way to approach drawing, but definitely it's like the simplest way to approach drawing anything, because you don't really need to worry about all of these like small details like ellipses, angles and everything. Usually if you are like trying to learn how to draw, you should just understand the method and don't get like extremely computer precise with it. Like the more you will do this type of a thing, the better you will get at it. And if you are drawing in digital medias, I highly recommend to you like rotate quite a lot, because if you will rotate quite a lot, then there's a huge chance you will spot some mistakes early on. So in my case, I think this guy is angled a little bit too much. So I can like slightly move it, and it's not like a big change, so it won't affect the overall like perspective that much, but it will simply look a bit cleaner, a bit better, just in my opinion. So I will merge these guys. The lines in the background I usually prefer to be a little bit more delicate, so I can see they are actually in the background, because they are thinner. Basically the idea is the closer the line is, the closer to you, the thicker it should be. And also now I kind of see this angle is not right, so most likely I kind of wrongly eyeballed the perspective. So again, I can do something like this. I can create a line. I can duplicate it several times, just get a basic perspective grid, and I will simply try to match it to like the bottom part of my drawing of the first surface that I kind of like established, and to the top part of a thing. And now I can only use like this type of a move, and as you can see how off the surface in the background is, so most likely it kind of means, like for example, this angle is a little bit too sharp. So this line on the bottom is okay, this line is okay, and this line should go a little bit more like this, and this angle will go more like this. So as you can see, like actually a millimeter in here kind of changed into like a huge difference happening in here. And now the whole rooftop, like the whole basically middle point will change. It will kind of switch to the side. So it's, as I said, always a good idea to verify what you are drawing, because now I'm able to like draw it in a little bit more precise manner. It's nothing too crazy, it's nothing too complicated, but if it's also not hard to do, just try to get it done nicely. And now I know this block is set in a perspective in a little bit nicer manner, and even though it might look sometimes a little bit more off, like for example, I still don't really feel okay about this line, but sometimes if you are like having everything extremely precise, extremely like straight and everything, like for the lines, they sometimes might just look off. So just remember, like the margin of error still should apply to those type of things. So this is basically the geometry for it. And if you do not like it, you can always like try to kind of like change the geometry a bit, just roll with it. I don't really feel the middle line is properly drawn. So I can do exactly the same thing with the verticals. And this also kind of proves the point that the better you will prepare your perspective grid, the easier the drawing will be for you. One of the like most commonly found mistakes the beginners do is they do not really care about the perspective grid, and later it kind of causes them to lose all the angles and everything. So as you can see, the angles in here are kind of incorrect. So what I have to do now is I kind of need to find like the balance between all the lines and to kind of like match what was not really working previously. So just working within this margin of error that I previously mentioned, and basically searching again, searching again for the middle point. It won't move that much, and now I have like a really good reference line, a guideline to basically draw a nice line in the vertical, as a vertical. And yeah, and I can, for example, connect this line with this line. So basically it will establish the middle point for the whole thing. It's always like a good line to have, to know where the middle actually is throughout the whole building. And the same thing in here. More or less it will look like this. And because I verified it like through every single like perspective grid, now I think this whole geometry simply looks a bit better and it's a little bit more clean. So to add some details, in here, the story is pretty much exactly the same as we did it in the 2-point perspective. I select the width for this thing, so I can show you like a really cool trick how you can actually make it really precise. So let me just fill all layers. Let me just fill this thing with like a gray to make it a bit more delicate. Let me mark it as a red layer. So now if you would like to make sure that you are drawing something with exactly the same width on like in here, so you will also get the X in here, you can always approach it in a manner that you will draw a vertical line, you will find the middle point for it, draw it in the perspective, and then simply draw a line that will go through this middle point. And this will kinda make sure, like it will assure you that the distance basically is the same. The way this is working on a flat plane, basically if you have like a middle point, so let me find the middle point, and if you draw a line through this point, a little bit more here, a little bit more further, then this is exactly the same like distance. So as you can see, the different proof for it is basically if you draw diagonals, they will meet exactly in the same thing. So it's basically drawing a diagonals, but kinda like backwards, I would say. And this allows us to draw this line pretty much without any problems whatsoever. And now if I want to draw the entrance, I would like mark, this is like the width of our thing, and what I should do in here is I would try to match the perspective, like the ellipse, to the whole perspective that I already have. This is also a theme that we will cover a little bit more when I will go with all the perspectives and everything type of a thing is, but the basic idea is if you have like a surface and if you will draw an ellipse in it, so we have a surface, we have like 4 points of connections in here, and we will draw an ellipse in here, so basically like a 4 parts to get a circle. The short axis, so the shortest line, this will be the long axis, the shortest line that you can draw in this ellipse that go through the middle of an ellipse that is also like rotated in a manner of 90 degrees to like this line. So basically you can just go make it like even to the edge and draw it in here. This basically will direct our second vanishing point. So our second vanishing point will go into this direction, and if this were a cylinder, then the cylinder will go like this. So if it could also be like a wheel or something like this. This is like the basic idea. So in here what I want to do is I kind of want to draw, like I can even draw the entire square more or less in the perspective. I can try to draw the entire ellipse in here, and I simply need to search for like the longest line that I can fit in here. So it will look like this, and the short line, the short axis will look like this more or less. And this kind of assures me that the angle of this ellipse is okay, is fine, and that it looks good. So this is a way how you can like draw this type of an entrance. And also what is really cool, if you find your entrance to be a little bit too small, because sometimes you will just draw something as too small. As you can see, the distance in here should be way shorter, or maybe not way shorter, but it should be a bit shorter. Then you can simply like offset everything. So you can draw like a line in here and basically make an offset, boom, like this. You make several lines as a guidelines that pretty much have the same offset. And since we are drawing like the old architecture type of a thing, you don't really need to be extremely precise with them. It will kind of add naturally this type of a detail that you can find on the top of this arc. And that's pretty much all. And now you have slightly bigger entrance. And for all of these things that happen in here, what you should actually do, you should specify how deep the whole thing goes. Everything happens in the perspective, and in here you will draw like a pattern. So let's say we will have something like this. So the basic idea is what we are doing now is we have like one pattern, let's say like this. Then we have this, well, Then we have the same pattern in here, a little bit more like flattened because it's closer to the horizon line, and we just connect the lines together, and it allows us to create like this nice looking, heavy detailed like type of a wall, edge, however to call it. So in here I can pretty much do exactly the same thing. I can go with the vertical line in here to try to match it. I try to draw exactly the same like pattern, but in the perspective. Just keep it in mind, everything that I drew in here should follow the perspective lines. And again, if you have like a really detailed perspective grid, then it will be way easier for you to draw all this stuff. And you can also use a bit thinner line to simply keep it a bit nicer. So also the edge will be in here. And now I kind of see that this thing should go a bit more like deeper in here. So in here I can like specify how tall it should be. So I can search for all these like lines. And the same shape I should actually include in here. So it should be like a small incision, back, down, back, down. And I guess this is all. And then in here I would just need to draw like the rest of the ellipses. Since I do not really want to go into that many details because I kind of view it from the top, I will simply try to draw some lines that are kind of parallel to what is happening in here, but most likely later, if I will like try to make this whole drawing in a bit nicer manner, this area will kind of get covered, so it does not look really good right now. So maybe later I will just spend a little bit more time on it, and now we'll kind of leave it as it is, since this is like, I would say, a detail at the moment. So this is this line, this is this line, and I will keep like this gray layer to kind of make it a bit easier to see. And now I just continue drawing the thing. So I'll go a little bit more to the top. So I will go like in here. I just mark with the line all the details that are happening in here. So I can draw them in the perspective, Now I kind of know also the window will be like in here. And I remember the fact that the window should be a bit shorter than these pillars on the sides. So most likely it means I can still add a little bit more geometry to those pillars on the sides because I still have like additional room for it. So I basically glue the new geometry to this thing. And for this window, since it's like a small window, what you need to do is basically duplicate the shape, and most likely the window has this type of a like detail, this type of an ending in here. So basically this is how you can approach drawing this type of a geometry, and this is pretty much all you actually really need to do with this type of a shade. So let me just search for all the colors. So this one, red, can get turned off, and I can view it like in here. So now we can go back in here to drawing this type of a thing. So to make it again a little bit easier for us to see, I will simply like cover it a little bit more in a white layer, kind of make it easier to see. I can draw, for example, this type of a line in here to the perspective, and now I know it's basically this shape. So angled line, this line, this line, this line, and this line, and yeah, this is an ending. So this is the like middle line. It's kind of distracting at the moment, so I can like select it and make it way more delicate. And what I want to do now is I want to take it to the top part, and I try to draw exactly the same square. I'm kind of again eyeballing it, but it can be like good enough, more or less, especially since this is like a really simple shape to duplicate, like this, kind of like this, and it looks kind of weird. So now we can kind of connect the first the new line. It's like, and I draw it incorrectly because it should go in here to the bottom first, then back, down, and back. Yeah, this is how it should look like. So now on the back thing, again, the first point goes basically to the first point, the second point basically goes to the second point, and as you can see, this is like a really precise type of a drawing. It, like, do not really need to be that precise. This line will go like, oh, a little bit too much in here, like a little bit less, like in here. This line basically will be like a small cylinder going in here to the back part. This part is invisible, won't be visible more or less. This angle also will look a little bit more like this. This line will go again a bit lower, like in here. And then you will like continue all these lines to go like to this square in here. So I actually should draw exactly the same square also in here, because this is in perspective, as you can see. So it will be a bit to the, a bit here. And then we go like to this point, in, this point in. Remember, everything should be in the perspective, and now I kind of just connect this one with this one. Whoops, now I see the top part is a little bit uglier, and this line will go in here with this guy. This angle is also not too nice, but will go like this. And if no, I missed the point, this line will go like this in here. Whoops. And this line will go, whoa, like this in here. And this line will go like this in here. And in here it looks kind of ugly, but in the end you will most likely put it in the shade. Like everything will be hidden with some shadows and everything. So most likely you will kind of get away even if the drawing is not that precise. And especially since this is like a really small drawing in a sense, then it's also way harder for you to like draw it precisely, especially since like we are not really focusing on this part that much. So you can just go with this angle once in here, and the rest basically will be hidden because this frontal part will like most likely hide almost everything. So if we just connect these lines together, pretty much everything that happens in here will be hidden. So only not this line. Whoops. And this is also the nightmare while actually drawing all the ellipses and everything is kind of a nightmare, because it's just hard, at least for me, to draw like a really nice curve on a tablet without a screen. But from the distance it looks kind of okay, so I will stick with it. Also, a really good idea if you are drawing something like this is to add like a cross section in the middle of it, so it always like guides our eye in a bit nicer manner. You have this small additional detail. And then I guess I started this guy a little bit too high. It should start like in here, so it's not actually now a little bit more like this instead of like being a half of a circle, but it do not really matter that much. The method is exactly the same, and then you can like draw the entrance in here. So here you will have some sort of an entrance to the whole building. So basically this is how you can draw or approach drawing this type of a doors, and the same thing happens in here. If you would like to draw like this flat type of a detail on the sides, what you can actually do to get the height properly, you just connect the lines in here in the perspective. It's quite easy to see that the objects on the side are a bit taller. So for example, this is the height of an entrance in here. So this part in here would be placed like this. So this is like one way to approach it. And then you should like search for the angle of the ellipse. So as again to a short axis will kind of match the vanishing point that you have already established. And also this is why I kind of think painting architecture might be a bit easier instead of like constructing everything, because in painting you can kind of suggest all the angles and everything. Of course you need to know how they will behave in the space, in the perspective and everything and whatnot, but it's always a little bit more time consuming in a sense to like construct every single line that you just have in here. So basically this is how you can approach it, or at least how I would approach it if I were to draw this type of a thing just by hand. Most likely I will prepare some sort of a like 3D model for this type of a things, because it simply will be a bit faster and the overall effect will simply be a bit nicer. So in this case I highly believe the 3D, using 3D actually is a really good idea, especially if you deal with all the arches and everything. So yeah, let me hide this guy. Now we will go to this top part, how you can like draw this shape that is happening in here with the rooftop, because it's a really cool like geometry that is like happening in here. So again, we can approach drawing the whole building in two manners. One of them will be like to just draw separately these two roofs, or we can draw them like in a square. So if we were to draw them in a square, we simply like say what type of a perspective do we have, and later we just choose the width of the roof in here or in here, especially in the perspective, in here and in here, and then we start from this. Basically this is like our base, or we can simply just draw one like long line type of a thingy, and then we can draw this type of a thing like this. It does not really matter how you start. If you are a beginner, I will rather suggest you to draw like a square and then place it in the perspective. And if you would like to see how this thing will behave in the perspective, again, you can use Photoshop for it. So you can, for example, choose dual axis symmetry, and this will kind of ensure you that you are drawing everything like really perfectly. So you can see almost everything, like in here is a perfect square, like the small mistakes do not really matter that much. And now I can always like place it in the perspective on the ground, and I kind of can distort the geometry. So more or less I will have like a perfect base for a drawing. So if it is a problem for you and you don't really like have the will to draw like this type of a thing, but you want to try to draw something a little bit more different, you can always like support yourself with everything that Photoshop basically allows you to do. So yeah, and now in here what I want to make is I want to draw rooftops. So basically I select the height for it, I mark it in here. The second one let me make as a blue one. So as you can see, a small margin of error. Nobody cares, to be honest, that much. We'll go through the middles. And what I did now is basically I made sure that the blue rooftop will be the same height as the red rooftop, because if they will be like one will be taller from the other, the booleans, wait, I need to search for the word, intersections. The intersections will look a little bit weird. So what I do now is I simply like draw the rooftop in here and in here. So you have like a blue rooftop. Now we have like a red rooftop. And as you can see, they meet. Let me just draw this line so you will see the colors a bit better where they kind of intersect. And as you can see, the red thing with the blue one intersects like in here, in here, in here, and in here, and they intersect also on the top. So basically the yellow lines are the like wspólna, wait, part of the common. It sounds weird, but the pyramid in the middle is the common part for both of these geometries. So now what I kind of know, as you can see, I kind of got like the middle of this part. So to put it in the perspective, on a photo actually. This line and most likely this line. It will kind of go like in there. Well, let me how to find this line quickly. You can draw like this surface in here more or less. Yep. So what I did basically, I found this intersection, like this point. Let's draw it as a way. This point A is basically this point A in here. So this is kind of what I found. And now if I would like to add a tower to it, basically I will use this like yellowish, this ugly yellow type of a pyramid to kind of establish the whole thing. So I make a new layer, I reduce the opacity again for it, so I will see everything in a better manner. And now I can add the tower. So from every single point in here, I will draw like a vertical line. And I draw this in 2-point perspective, so every vertical line basically is a vertical line. So there is no like third vanishing point. I draw this type of a line for the top. I did an extension in here to make sure that this line is drawn correctly. Now, as you can see, I basically repeat the blue line because they like overlay in this certain view. And now I have drawn a tower. As you can see, this like this box kind of intersects with like the blue rooftop and the red rooftop, and the way they intersect is exactly in the middle, because this line is going like in the middle, so the intersection is in here. So the rooftop basically projects on the wall with this shape. In here the same, the middle to the top, where this line intersects with this line is basically the intersection in here. So this part of a rooftop will like leave this type of a shape in here. And if I make everything a bit thicker, so the geometry will simply read better. Boom and boom. So as you can see, we got like a box sitting on top of a church. And if you were to do this type of a thing in 3D, it will take you like 1 minute or something like this, because this is like a really easy intersection. But also learning how to intersect certain geometries is a huge help. Like the last week I had some problems with like intersecting the top part with this type of guys, because I identified incorrectly what is the shape that I'm trying to intersect. But this one is much simpler, so it's also much easier to explain. And if I will find the middle part, I simply go with the height, and then I connect the edges, the vertices to the top, and I have a rooftop. So this is pretty much how I would approach drawing this type of a roof. And I could combine everything that I did in here with this guy. So basically I would have to draw everything that is happening in here and combine it with all of these informations. But again, this is how you pretty much can approach drawing everything. And why I highly suggest you to have everything on the layers is because you can turn this off and you will see how pretty much it will look like. But usually I like to have all of this like supporting layers and all of these colors on the same thing that are happening in here. So I think this guy is already finished. We can just go with the second one. So let me select everything in here and chart one, and let me group it and hide it. In here there's the plan, the last thing. For this guy, what I think is really cool and what you could actually do is to draw this type of a tower on top of like a rooftop, because this is like a hexagonal tower, and because you can see like 3 or maybe 4, 2. We can simply draw it. If you are not sure, always draw on top of everything. So the line goes in here, 1, 2, 3, 4. Gonna connect it like this and like this in the perspective. And now easily without any problems I can identify that in fact this is like 1 2 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 walls. So I thought this is like the 6 walls type of a tower, the hexagon, this is octagon. So later we will take care of this, but now I would like to show you how to draw this type of a rooftop, because this is like extremely easy, I would say. So basically what you do, again, you start with drawing some sort of a box in the perspective. So you can do it freehand, you can like use the shift for it. I actually prefer even drawing this type of things freehand because it has this like a little bit more character to it. I kind of wonder how it will look like if I were to draw them on the tablet with a screen. One day I will have to try. Then we will add like the rooftop. And again, for the rooftop you can use shift, you don't have to. But if you are going to draw everything by hand, really befriend the Ctrl-Z combination to undo mistakes and everything. And we have something like this, and now simply to add a second rooftop we will like change the angle. Most likely I will just repeat the angle from this view. I will close it like this, and just I will add to this geometry this like smaller box that is sitting on a side of everything. So nothing too crazy. I would say this one is quite easy to understand. And for example, if the building has like this kind of like is building up, so from the front, like let's say this wall, well, won't look like this. Like the verticals won't be vertical, they will have like this mass that is kind of leading to the top, that the top part is kind of shrinking. The best way to do it, in my opinion, is to actually like add an offset in here and in here. So basically you draw like the offsetted surface on the bottom part, and you simply just like connect it somewhere to the geometry. So you will most likely will always be able to find like a place where you can kind of add this type of geometry to everything in here. So this is like a really easy way to add a bit more mass and to kind of reduce the amount of vertical layers. But just remember, now the surface is kind of tilted, and in here this line will go like this, and in here it will just go continuously vertical. So if you were to do something like this, that the entire wall is kind of like tilted, then just remember the rooftop will also kind of change the geometry. It will kind of go a little bit more to the back, so the better idea is to add a part of a rooftop that will kind of cover this type of a wall. So yeah, that's pretty much how you can approach it. And then it's a really simplification, but most likely this will look like this. I don't really want to get that much into the details with it. So let's now do this rooftop, because this one will be a little bit more interesting. And if you are going to practice this type of things, again, the easiest way to do it is to draw everything from the top, because from the top you can see everything really clearly. And yeah, basically this is like the main reason, in my opinion. You can, without any type of a problem, see what you are doing, and it's way easier to analyze and understand yeah, pretty much everything. So I add this stuff in here. So basically what I did is I have a rooftop. In here I have like this middle plan, and to this middle plan I actually want to add like a square, because I will be like drawing the octagon like from the square. It's not really like the best way to draw an octagon, but just to give you an idea how you can construct it, because you can construct actually like a perfect octagon, but it does not really matter that much at this moment. So what I will simply do is more or less draw this plus size inside of everything that I have in here. And by connecting all the points that I just created on the sides, I will get something that is really close enough to the actually octagon. So to put it a little bit from a different view, what I have done now is I drew the rooftop and I placed a surface with the octagon in here. So this is what is happening here. And now comes kind of like the tricky part, how to actually project all these points to the surface, so you will know like how much of a wall you will see. So we will now try to find this point and this point and this point. And this is basically quite an easy thing to do. So we will start from the left and to the right, because on this side you can basically draw like this and just don't care really what is happening from the side that is hidden. So this red line touches the edge of the rooftop in here. And basically what I want to do is I want to project this point to the bottom part of the rooftop. Now I go back in the perspective. So basically I'm trying to do is now I try to draw a cross section, and now I can see this line is like in real life is perpendicular to this one. Parallel, not perpendicular. It's like this. This is parallel, right? Like, let me make sure only. Yeah, it's parallel. So yeah, so basically it means if this point is in here, this point also will be on this line somewhere. So I simply just take a point in here, I go down, and where these lines cross each other, then I get the projection of this point in here. I do exactly the same thing in here. Also, this is one of the reasons why I drew this plus size, because now this plus shape, because now as you can see I have already a line that helps me to draw the cross section or the part of the cross section. I do this type of a thing again, and now if this point goes in here, this point goes in here, they meet in here, this is the second point. Now I kind of notice the whole thing is rotated, so basically this point will be in here, but it does not really matter. The method is exactly the same for everything. In here I repeat the process. I go like this, I search for this, I search for this point, it will be in here, and if everything more or less is okay, those lines will be like going to the same perspective. If all of a sudden this line goes like this, most likely you have a mistake somewhere. So this will be like this will connect in here like this. So let me make it a bit more obvious. And the rest of the thing we don't really need to draw, because as you can see, rest of the things are actually hidden by the geometry, so we don't really see any of them happening. And I think my really old poster is like gluing off the doors, because it's making like a creepy ass noise. So we have something like this, and now if you know that in here there's a middle, the way to draw this type of a rooftop is exactly the same. From the middle we go to the top, and we simply specify the height of the rooftop, and we simply connect all the lines together in here. Boom and boom, and we have like a rooftop. This is like how you can add this type of a thing together to all the drawings. Also, while drawing this type of a things, because in here there's a really cool example, and that in my opinion you should really heavily follow, is if you really feel tired by drawing all this geometry and everything, because it can be tiring. This is not like the easiest way, I would say, especially if this is like a new thing for you, then it can really quickly get tiring. So then later just try to, for example, copy the textures that you see in here. So what I would do is I would draw some sort of a like fragment of a wall, and I would simply like try to draw a really similar texture, because this way you will kind of remember how you can texture different buildings, and instead of like just doing this, because most likely if I were to tell you to draw some sort of a like bricked wall or stone wall, you will go with something like this, or you will go with something like this. So like these ideas are okay, but the best way to actually study how to learn things in a little bit more detail is to actually just go to the pictures and try to copy them. For example, this rock has really unusual shape. Also this one kinda has unusual shape, so it might be like really beneficial for you to simply study this type of things, because it simply looks cool and you can create patterns with it. So as I said, it's a really neat thing to do, in my opinion. And later, if you will be drawing some sort of a thing from your imagination, you will just remember this type of things. Also, for example, note how different like the outer stroke rim of this window looks like, because basically if you have like a window like this, on top part you will have like a keystone, and then it will go like this around, and in here sometimes different things will happen. It really depends on the window, but also it's always a good idea to add a little bit more texture in where you have a window, because it will kind of glue the window to the wall. It simply will look a bit better, a little bit more natural. And also the same thing applies for the rooftops. As you can see, this looks like a really long like planks just getting on top of each other, so most likely they create something like this from the side, and it's just good to remember this type of things. And also you can find like stuff like this happening with all the hidden faces and whatnot. So this is like the second thing that we could cover in here. So let me also hide it and move it a little bit more to the top. And let's go with this guy, because it has really unusual type of a thing happening, because we have like a geometry that is kind of intersecting with the cylinder, and this is not something that you really often see. So this will be like the last example that I would like to show you on how you can approach intersecting different forms with each other. So I guess later I will change the title of the video, how to kind of intersect different shapes together. So yeah, basically if you have some sort of an ellipse, and you will go with something like this, and then you need to draw like a little bit more flatter ellipse because it's closer to the horizon line, and drawing ellipses on the graphic tablet is a complete nightmare. So we will just leave it like this. It's not the nicest ellipse out there, but it will get the job done. And now what I want to do is I kind of want to add like a part of a box. Basically, I want to add a box to this geometry, to like this cylinder. What I want to do is I want to make sure it goes in the cylinder, so the intersection will be a little bit better visible, will be a little bit more visible. And now what I do, I draw the rest of the box, and boom. Again, not the nicest drawing, but it kind of gets the explanation done. So again, if you're trying to intersect something with something, search for the points where the shapes on the ground intersect together, and simply look how they kinda go together as a line. So basically it intersects in here. If you intersect like a vertical plane with vertical plane, you can expect to get like a vertical line. So it will go like this in here to this point. Now, as you can see in here, we have like some sort of a part of an ellipse. So basically this is like the line that is cutting the box in here, and pretty much the same line will happen in here, just a little bit more like flattened because it's closer to the horizon line. So if we were to, like, for example, cut a box with a cylinder, what you will get is actually, so let me draw it like from the front, you will get this type of a shape. So this is like the part of our cylinder, and in here we have the rest of our box. To put it simply, it will look like this, and the missing part is basically this part, whoops, of a cylinder that is happening. That is happening in here, and this is pretty much how you approach just drawing rooftops and combining these two things together. And now if you would like to add a rooftop, the same story. Like as you can see, the middle line actually overlaps with this line of in here. So keep it in mind, sometimes line will overlap. We go to this line, it intersects in here. We select the same height in the perspective. So now we know the top part of a roof, like the edge of the roof on the top, enters the cylinder in here. It ends in here. So now we could like draw like one point that will help us find the rest of the rooftop. This point to the top connects in here. This line in perspective connects in here. This goes to this height. This line goes in here. And now we kind of know the angle for these points will look kind of like this. And this is pretty much all how you can approach drawing this type of a guys. So I think for this stream this will be all for the small techniques that I have showed you, and I guess on the next stream I will actually draw this type of a building with all the trees around and everything, because I think it looks really neat and I really like this type of a building. It just looks cool. It has cool textures, really cool environment, because all of the small like graves and everything, it just looks like a nice thing to do. So again, if you are going to like to try to draw something, I will highly suggest you to go with stuff like this. And what is also a really cool thing that you can do, let me just run Rhinoceros, the 3D software. And let it load. Okay. Yes, let me just change the resource properties. Wait, you still cannot see the rhino. And why it is not showing a rhino? Oh, okay, it is in here. So basically also what you can do and what you actually should do if you are playing with some 3D software, for example, Rhino is really good for it, I would say, because it is working on like NURBS. So long story short, it's like a mathematical type of a things. So if we go into like a technical in here, you can see it's a bit thin. I have no idea how to make it a bit like more visible, maybe by selecting, but you can see the cross section is happening in here. So you can actually see how the cross section will look like. And for example, if I were to add a sphere in here, for example, you can also see how all the cross sections behave together. So this is like a really neat thing to do, because as you can see, for example, in here there's this really cool looking curve where you try to intersect the sphere with the cylinder, and this type of things are just hard. So actually doing all of this in 3D is personally, I think, a really cool idea. And also what is really cool in 3D is doing all this type of a stuff. So for example, this is the cross section I was talking about. Now let me draw the entire doors in here. So it will go like this, and now I want to add like the top part in here. I will trim what is unnecessary. I will connect, join it, and I will simply say sweep one. So I select a rail, select the cross section. I go like this, and I have the thing done. So for drawing, I don't really see much sense, especially if you have drawn this many times, to just draw this type of things, especially if you are like going to draw or paint. You can always like just do this type of a thing in 3D and simply like splash it on your drawing or art or wherever and just trace it. So it will be a bit easier on you. But if you just want to go like true to your skills and you don't want to use any type of a 3D, just feel free to draw everything. So yeah, I guess this will be all for today, and thanks everybody for tuning in. As always, if you have any questions whatsoever, feel free to ask them in the comments, mostly on YouTube. And that's pretty much all. And thanks for watching. Now I will show a proper ending screen instead of starting with an ending. So yeah, goodbye. Thanks for watching. Have a nice day or night or whatever part of the day you are in.